Hello YouTube and welcome to my channel. It's my very first video that I'm doing. I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for coming. Please subscribe and like the video. Thank you very much. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a video that I've been meaning to drop, but I just haven't had time to even think when to drop it, when would be the right time to drop it. It's just been playing on my mind for ages and ages and ages. Kell Brook's coming up now. He's fighting Terence Crawford, which is going to be a massive fight for him. We wish him all the best. This video, I really want to talk about his relationship with Eddie Hearn and the progress that he's made since winning the world champion, the IBF World Championship in 2014. Since then, Kell Brook hasn't fought a known opponent in the top 10. There hasn't been much progress with Kell Brook's career. There's been issues with injuries, which is ongoing. It's really unfortunate for Kell Brook. People get injured, athletes get injured. These things happen. We look at Kell Brook and we look at Eddie Hearn. I look at Eddie Hearn and I say to myself, what has Eddie Hearn actually done for Kell Brook since he actually won the world title? All credit goes to Eddie Hearn for building up Kell Brook to the point of 2014. Him having those two fights against Carson Jones. Him then fighting the world champion in Porter, Sean Porter, which was a great fight. It was a good fight. It was very, very tough. It was very, very marginal. But he got the job done and he brought the world title home. Since then, you look at a long list of welterweight champions or even fighters, world-class fighters in the top 10 welterweight division. You look at fighters from Lamont Peterson, who never ducks a fight, would always fight, would travel and fight. You look at other fighters like a Jesse Vargas, who's just recently been stopped by Mikey Garcia. You look at other fighters, the top-tier fighters, such as the Pacquiaos, the Terence Crawfords, other fighters as well as sort of Danny Garcia. I mean, I look at the issue that you'd have with the American fighters not wanting to come over to try and maybe sort of bring them down into a situation where it gets brought down to the fact that they've had to travel just for the money. But at the same time, there's so many other opponents within the top 10 of the welterweight division for Eddie Hearn to at least made an offer to bring them over, to actually entertain the fact that Kell Brook is the number one guy. Kell Brook at the time, 2014, was the number one welterweight in the division. He was number one. But then you look at the progress that's been made since then. The fact that he's had the injuries has obviously brought him back a bit in his career. However, what could have been done? I believe you could have actually got him many more fights. You could have literally from the point of him getting injured in 2014, he was due to fight in December. As you can see on BoxRec, that Kell Brook was 3 months out. And then he made his return in March 2015. So there was just a 3-month delay. So when you hear Eddie Hearn talking about Kell Brook and how he had to go over and sit with him and try and get his career back on track, that's a contrary to what I can see and what we can see here. You know, when you look at champions and you look at the records and you look at the history books, when it comes down to it, it comes down to what we can see on paper. And I can see here if a fighter is injured and he's medically injured and he's come back within 3 months, then he's done his best to get back. He's got back to work. Now, it's down to his promoter for him to get him the work and to make sure that he gets him in the best position possible. And then you look at other fights that he's had where it will be a Triple G. Well, a Triple G, that was an offer that was put in place for Chris Eubank Jr. That was an offer that was made to him. Kell Brook had been put on the sidelines for many, many years without fighting any any known fighters, any creditable fighters, and anybody who he would even feel necessary to get up for. If you're a prize fighter, number one in the division, and you're being offered a unknown fighter, you're gonna tell your promoter, no, I need to get a top challenger to compete with. I need to be able to compete against a top fighter, because if you're gonna give me an unknown fighter, then I'm not gonna be able to have the mindset to be able to get myself into training, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do my runs, go abroad, remove myself from my family just to fight a warm-up fight. And he's had to do that twice on 2 occasions before even looking to fight Errol Spence, where Errol Spence is a top fighter, but at that time he needed some really good fighters to actually bring in. At the time as well, Errol Spence was an up-and-coming world-class fighter who was very, very dangerous at the time, who didn't really offer anything. So at the time of sitting on the sidelines for 2 years and then being thrust into a world-class fighter who really wasn't bringing that much in terms of the purse and what comes with it, the risk to reward was very, very, very substantial to a fighter who had been sidelined for so long without a promoter showing him any incentive to get back in the ring. You have Kell Brook damaged from an opponent in Triple G, where you have a video here which I have from Eddie Hearn talking to IFL, and I'll play the video.
When you talk about loyalty, you know about what I've done for Kell Brook? He talks about one of the most disappointing things was, I saved the day in the Golovkin pay-per-view. No, you made an absolute fortune in the Golovkin pay-per-view, and you were provided with the opportunity that you, your dad, your manager, and your trainer, Dominic Ingle, said, yes, we want this fight. It took them an hour, less than that, to take that fight. It was up at middleweight. They knew they could maintain their belt at £147, and he took the chance because he was living so badly. And we never knew if this kid would even fight again, let alone get a big fight. You talk about loyalty. When I talk about loyalty, I talk about sitting in the hospital with him when he spunked the weight and didn't even train for Carson Jones, sitting in that hospital with him till 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I've been up to his house dozens of times, sat in his kitchen with him and his dad, and tried to get his career back on track. So don't talk to me about loyalty. And what your loyalty is, after I had to give you fights against Jojo Dan, Kevin Bizier, Rabchenko, Zarafa, DeLuca, fights that I've done my conkers on over the years. You made the decision to turn your back on me, right? I don't have a problem with that. Once you do that, you're gone. I don't have to fight for you anymore, right? Me, and you put your trust and your faith in me, I will give you every ounce of my soul. You put your trust and your faith in me, I will give you every ounce of my soul. I wanted it on Sky for the fans. Don't talk bollocks. You wanted the most money you could get. This is the reality. And I wouldn't even, I feel like I have to justify that interview because it...
So there you have it. There's a video there of Eddie Hearn, basically trying to justify the fact of him not being able to get fights for Kell Brook, and then trying to justify it by him now saying, well, he's gone off to do what he had to do. And I mean, at this point, you really have to look at Kell Brook and you say to yourself, well, if you look at a Chris Eubank Jr., where he's been able to go out and he's been able to negotiate shrewdly with other promoters, and he's now with the PBC, you look at Chris Eubank, and actually he's had 2 losses, but his career actually is on the up. He has many more opportunities. He could easily move up from 160 to 168 at super middleweight. He has other opportunities at 2 different weight classes. He's gone from one trainer in Floyd Mayweather Senior. He's trained with reputable trainers, and then he's moved to another reputable trainer in Roy Jones Jr. And he's really sort of given himself the incentive to want to train, to want to develop, to want to learn. And he's actually really, if you look at a young fighter and he's really in the development stages, it really shows that sometimes it's really good to be loyal to a trainer, but it's also good for your own development to go out and get some knowledge from other trainers also, to be able to test yourself, to put yourself into positions where you may not be comfortable, or maybe it's taking your time for development, because when you get into the ring, you're going to be tested at all times and it's never going to be the same every time you get in there. And if you want the best out of a situation, you've got to make the best out of it by working hard and learning from various different aspects and different points of views within the game. And I think Chris Eubanks Jr. has done really well in doing so. So when you look at Kell Brook's career now, where it's gone from being a number one welterweight, he's now got a challenge now in Terence Crawford, who's going to push him all the way. I think the first 6 rounds, you're going to see a real technical fight. I think you're going to see 2 very sharp opponents. But then from the 6th round onwards, you're going to start to see Terence Crawford start to step it up. I think his punch count is going to almost double. And you'll start working Kell Brook angles, the footwork, the speed. I think it will be a testing time for him come the 9th round. And I think later on in the rounds, maybe 10th or 11th, he'll end up stopping him on his stall. I don't think he'll drop him, but I think he'll stop him to the point where he actually can't go no more, because the pressure will add up. Every round, Terence Crawford's punch count is going to increase. The stamina levels are going to increase. And I think Kell Brook's stamina levels will decrease and his punch count will decrease also. So it's going to be a good fight. First 6 rounds, I think, will be in the history books for one of the great fights. And I think Kell Brook would probably do best in actually doing that, in putting it all out there the first 6 rounds, and then maybe look to survive for the last 6 rounds and then leave it to the judges. I think that could be it. Or maybe try and steal one of the later rounds late. But there it is. And I think, it will be a stoppage, late stoppage. Or it could be, maybe it definitely won't get the judges' count, even if it is a tight one. So, unfortunately, Kell Brook, his career, looking at it from him winning the title, has unfortunately been wasted by Eddie Hearn, the self-proclaimed best promoter. A guy where, moreover, if you look at some of the recent fights that he signed in Mikey Garcia and Devin Haney, if you look at those fighters, Eddie Hearn seems to have lots and lots of bags of money for those guys to fight. They can fight Jesse Vargas. How much was Mikey Garcia earning to fight Vargas? Why wasn't that sort of money offered to Vargas when Kell Brook was fighting? So when Eddie Hearn talks about loyalty and a place in his heart, where does Mikey Garcia come in having that place in his heart when he's only got a 1 or 2 fight deal? It's all a mess. I think it's really a mess how this has happened. And I think you look at Callum Smith as well. If Callum Smith is fortunate to get that Canelo fight, I think he's done really, really well. At the end of the day, if you look at Callum Smith's career to date, he's put himself in a good position by winning the tournament, the Muhammad Ali tournament. But if he doesn't actually get that Canelo fight, then a lot of questions are going to be asked. And I could see myself doing this same video about Callum Smith in 5 years from now. Because Callum Smith, in my view, when he won that Muhammad Ali tournament, he was the number 1 super middleweight. But I haven't heard from him since. I have no idea who he's even fought. And I actually really thought he was a top prospect who could literally take himself to the top. He should even be some talks of him fighting Benavidez or Plant. But I hear absolutely nothing. I hear Eddie Hearn talking about Charlo maybe moving up. Or I hear things about Charlo maybe moving up to fight these guys because they can't fight. You look at Andres. I mean, these guys are world-class fighters who can't seem to get fights. And sometimes you need to put the money up in order to get these guys the fights, in order to get them the world titles, so then they can lock down positions within their divisions, their weight classes, to show that, well, they're the standout guys. Because if they want the competition is with the belts, it's with the championships. And the best thing you can do as a top-notch fighter, where people don't want to fight you, is to actually be the reward. And then people obviously see the risk, but then if you have the reward, then that comes hand in hand. So if people want the reward, then they're going to have to take the risk. But first of all, you've got to give them that reward. You've got to put them in those positions to get those fights, to get those belts. And then once they've earned that, then they can then get those fights. And those fights will come. But you have to have a promoter who's willing to invest in you. You have to have a promoter who's willing to really think about your development, and even trying to release you as well. Sometimes if you're in a position where nobody wants to fight you, and you have maybe different weight classes that you can move to, then that gives you the opportunity. And then there could be opportunities where maybe if you need to go get that belt, you can go to the competition's promoter and do a deal, knowing that you can come back, and then you've got the reward of having 2 belts for them to come check you for. But that's about it for me. Like and subscribe. And yeah, man, we'll catch you up on the next one. Thank you.